The mirror doesn't lie, but it does start to feel like a stranger is staring back when the internal shift finally takes hold. You stand in a room you've occupied for years, surrounded by the artifacts of a life you spent decades building, yet suddenly nothing fits. The furniture, the conversations, the very air in the room feels tight, like an old suit that's 2 sizes too small. This is the silent birth of the mismatch, a psychological friction where your current reality begins to grate against the person you are actually becoming. Most people mistake this for a bad mood or a passing phase of burnout, but it's actually something far more profound. It is the soul's way of signaling that the container you've built is no longer large enough to hold your potential. You look at your routine and realize it's a repetitive loop of safety that has become a cage. The tension is visceral, a heavy weight in the chest that persists even when everything on the outside looks perfectly fine to the rest of the world. You have reached the expiration date of your current identity, and the discomfort is the only way your subconscious knows how to scream for air. This realization is often terrifying because it suggests that the foundation you've stood on is actually quicksand, and the person you've worked so hard to be is someone you no longer even like. It is a moment of profound isolation where you realize that while the world sees you as finished, you feel like you are just starting to unravel. This is the first crack in the porcelain of your ego, the moment where the you of yesterday begins to die, so that a more authentic version can finally breathe. It is not a breakdown, though it feels like one. It is a breakthrough that requires you to acknowledge the painful truth that you have officially outgrown the life you once prayed for. We are conditioned to value consistency above all else, which makes the feeling of outgrowing yourself feel like a betrayal of your own history. You feel a sense of guilt for being dissatisfied with a life that others might envy, creating a silent war between gratitude and the desperate need for evolution. This psychological tension is known as cognitive dissonance, where your external actions no longer align with your internal values, leading to a state of chronic emotional exhaustion. You find yourself nodding along to conversations that bored you months ago, or performing roles at work and home that feel like a costume you forgot to take off. The fear of change acts as a powerful anchor, whispering that you are being ungrateful or impulsive, yet the silence of staying the same becomes louder than any external noise. We ignore this moment because the cost of listening is too high. It demands that we dismantle the comfort we've spent years securing. To acknowledge the dissatisfaction is to admit that a massive change is coming, and most of us would rather suffer in a familiar hell than risk an unfamiliar heaven. However, ignoring the call doesn't make it go away. It only causes the frustration to ferment into bitterness. You start to see your current life as a series of obligations rather than choices, and the people around you feel like echoes of a past version of yourself that you've already buried. The identity conflict is a grueling process of realizing that you are no longer the protagonist of the story you are currently living. You are an observer watching a ghost go through the motions of your day, wondering when the real you will finally be allowed to speak. This is the threshold of transformation, the uncomfortable space between who you were and who you are meant to be, where the only way out is through a total reinvention. The discomfort of this awakening is not a mistake. It is a precise diagnostic tool designed to point out exactly where your life has become a lie. We often spend our lives trying to fix the symptoms of our misery, changing jobs, buying new things, or seeking temporary distractions, without ever addressing the core issue that our identity has simply expired. Growth begins with the brutal awareness that the version of you that survived the past cannot thrive in the future. This awareness is often quiet, occurring in the middle of a crowded party or during a mundane commute, when the realization hits that you are fundamentally different from the person who signed up for this path. You feel a strange sense of mourning for your old self, even as you despise the limitations that self placed upon you. It is a lonely experience because you cannot explain it to people who still see you through the lens of your past achievements. They see the person who succeeded, while you see the person who is suffocating under the weight of those very successes. The fear of change is amplified by the fact that you don't yet know who the new version of you is supposed to be. You are in a void, a liminal space where the old has ended but the new has not yet arrived. Most people turn back here, retreating into the safety of their old skin because the unknown is too daunting to face alone. They choose the predictable pain of stagnation over the volatile possibility of rebirth. But once the awareness has been sparked, you can never truly go back to being the person who was satisfied with mediocrity. The veil has been lifted, and the silent dissatisfaction will continue to grow until it becomes an undeniable roar that forces you to move. You are standing at the edge of your own existence, looking down into the abyss of potential, realizing that the only thing keeping you from the life you want is the version of yourself you are currently protecting. Society praises the self-made individual, but it rarely discusses the self-destroyed individual, the person who has the courage to burn down their own house to build something better. This chapter of your life is about that fire, the necessary heat required to forge a personality that your past can no longer recognize. The emotional discomfort you feel is the friction of your potential rubbing against your current limitations. It's like a seed that has become too large for its shell. The shell must break, or the seed will rot. Most of us spend our entire lives trying to prevent the shell from breaking, fearing the vulnerability of the soft center. We cling to our titles, our relationships, and our reputations as if they are life rafts, when they are actually the very weights pulling us under. The moment you realize you've outgrown yourself is the moment you must decide if you are willing to be a villain in your own history to become the hero of your future. You will disappoint people. You will confuse those who have benefited from your old boundaries. You will be called inconsistent, unstable, and perhaps even selfish. But the alternative is to live a life that is a performance, a curated museum of a person who no longer exists. The psychological gripping nature of this realization comes from the fact that you are the only one who can hear the alarm clock. Everyone else is asleep to your internal evolution, and they will try to pull you back into the dream because your awakening threatens their own comfort. Self-reinvention is an act of rebellion against the status quo of your own ego. It requires you to look at your reflection and admit that the person looking back is a placeholder. To move forward, you must accept that your past was just a training ground, not a final destination, and that the discomfort you feel is the compass pointing toward your true north. The fear of change is often just the fear of losing what we think we own, but in the process of reinvention, you realize that you never truly owned your identity anyway. It was just a collection of habits and expectations. When you dive deep into self-awareness, you begin to see the strings that have been pulling you. You see the childhood wounds, the societal pressures, and the desire for validation that shaped the person you are today. Breaking free of those strings is a violent act of will. It involves a deep, emotional reckoning with the fact that you have been living someone else's version of a good life. This is where the intensity of the blueprint begins. It is the realization that your dissatisfaction is actually your greatest ally. It is the only thing honest enough to tell you that you are settling. People ignore this moment because they are afraid of the work required to change, but the work of staying the same is actually much harder. It takes an incredible amount of energy to maintain a facade that is crumbling. It takes a toll on your health, your creativity, and your spirit to pretend that you are okay with a life that no longer fits. The psychological grip of this chapter is found in the admission that you are ready to let go of the good to reach for the great. It is the moment you stop negotiating with your fear and start listening to your hunger. This awakening is a call to arms for your own soul, a demand that you stop playing small in a world that needs you to be expansive. You are not a static object. You are a dynamic process, and the moment you stop evolving, you start dying. The tension you feel is the life force trying to move through you, pushing against the walls of your own making. True reinvention doesn't start with a new habit or a new city. It starts with the internal decision to stop tolerating a version of yourself that is beneath your dignity. This is the awakening that most people spend their entire lives avoiding through noise and distraction. They fill their ears with podcasts and their eyes with screens to avoid the deafening silence of their own discontent. But you are here, listening to this, because the noise is no longer enough to drown out the truth. You are standing in the wreckage of your own expectations, realizing that the life you built was based on a version of you that no longer exists. The fear of being unrecognized by your past is the ultimate test of your resolve. Can you handle being a stranger to the people who think they know you? Can you handle the silence that follows when you stop playing the character everyone expects? This is the emotional weight of the journey. It is a deeply reflective process that asks you to look at your failures not as endings, but as the compost for your future growth. The psychological tension of this evolution is the feeling of being between two worlds, belonging to neither. You are no longer the person who is satisfied with the old ways, but you are not yet the person who has mastered the new. It is a gripping, intense period of transition where faith in your own potential is the only thing that will keep you moving. You are beginning to see that growth is not an additive process. It is a subtractive one. You don't become someone new by adding more to your life. You do it by stripping away everything that isn't you. The awareness you are feeling now is the first step of that stripping process, the moment where the mask begins to peel away. Ultimately, the moment you realize you've outgrown yourself is a gift, even if it feels like a curse. It is the universe's way of telling you that you are ready for more responsibility, more depth, and more life. Most people will ignore the signal until it becomes a crisis, but you have the opportunity to listen while it is still a whisper. This is the psychological foundation of the self-reinvention blueprint, the courage to be honest about your own boredom and your own brilliance. You are stepping into a territory where your old maps are useless, and that is exactly where you need to be. The fear you feel is just the ego's way of reacting to its own impending demise. Let it be afraid. The person you are becoming is someone who doesn't need the approval of the past to validate the future. This is a deeply emotional and psychologically gripping awakening that marks the end of your apprenticeship to other people's expectations. You are now the architect of your own identity, standing before a blank plot of land with the tools to build whatever you desire. The discomfort is merely the preparation for the expansion. As you move forward, remember that the person your past can't recognize is the person who is finally free. This is the moment the blueprint begins to take shape, not in the world outside, but in the quiet, resolute chambers of your own heart. You have realized the mismatch, you have felt the tension, and you have acknowledged the fear. Now, the only thing left to do is to step across the threshold and begin the work of becoming the person you were always meant to be. The transition is underway, the old world is fading, and for the first time in a long time, you are actually awake to the possibilities of your own life. This is the beginning of the end of who you were. To build anything of substance, you must first become a demolition expert of your own soul. Most people fail at transformation because they try to decorate a house that is structurally unsound and infested with the rot of their past. They want the new life, the new body, and the new bank account, but they are terrified to murder the version of themselves that created the current mess. Your identity is not a sacred temple. It is a collection of survival mechanisms, outdated habits, and inherited beliefs that you have mistaken for your essence. You have spent years protecting a version of yourself that was never meant to be permanent. This is the psychological equivalent of wearing a suit of armor in a swimming pool. What once protected you is now the very thing drowning you. To move forward, you must accept that the you who exists today is the primary obstacle to the you who needs to exist tomorrow. This isn't about self-improvement, it's about self-annihilation. You have to be willing to look at your favorite excuses, your most comfortable victim stories, and your habitual weaknesses and see them as the enemies they are. The ego will scream and claw to stay alive because it views change as a literal death. It will try to convince you that your limitations are your personality and that your failures are your heritage. It will tell you that being authentic means staying exactly as you are, which is the most dangerous lie you could ever believe. Authenticity is not a static state of being. It is the courage to discard any version of yourself that no longer serves the highest vision of your future. If you want to become someone your past can't recognize, you have to stop recognizing yourself in the mirror of your history and start seeing the stranger you are destined to become. The tragedy of the human condition is that we would rather be miserable in familiarity than thrive in the unknown. We hold on to our outdated identities like a child clings to a tattered blanket, even when the blanket is filthy and provides no warmth. This is ego resistance in its purest form, a biological imperative. The tragedy of the human condition is that we would rather be miserable in familiarity than thrive in the unknown. We hold on to our outdated identities like a child clings to a tattered blanket, even when the blanket is filthy and provides no warmth. This is ego resistance in its purest form, a biological imperative to maintain the status quo even when the status quo is killing your potential. You have unconsciously built a fortress around your weakest version, defending your right to stay small, because at least you know how to handle being small. You know the weight of your current depression, the rhythm of your current anxiety, and the taste of your current failures. The unknown, however, is a void that offers no such certainty. To let go of your current identity is to experience a psychological death, a terrifying period where the old I is gone and the new I hasn't yet materialized. This is the space where most people quit. They feel the cold wind of the void, and they run back to the burning building of their old life because at least it's warm. You have to realize that your brain is wired for survival, not for fulfillment. It will prioritize the safety of the mediocre over the risk of the magnificent every single time. You must override this primitive software with a brutal, conscious will. You have to stop treating your past self with such reverence. That person served their purpose, they got you this far, but they are not qualified to lead you into the next decade. Your current environment and social circle are the prison guards of your outdated identity. Every person in your life has a vested interest in you staying exactly the same because your change forces them to question their own stagnation. When you decide to kill your old self, you are also killing the version of you that they felt comfortable with. This is why the people closest to you are often the most resistant to your growth. They will use nostalgia as a weapon, reminding you of who you really are, to keep you trapped in the version of you that they can control. You have to be brutally honest about how much of your personality is actually just a reaction to the expectations of others. You have built a life around being liked, being predictable, and being safe. You have traded your power for a sense of belonging in a tribe that doesn't even want you to win. To destroy this identity, you must be willing to be misunderstood, disliked, and isolated for a season. You have to realize that the environment that nurtured your weakness cannot support your strength. This isn't just about changing your habits. It's about changing the very atmosphere of your life. If you keep the same friends, the same hobbies, and the same routines, you are keeping the old identity on life support. You are essentially trying to grow a tropical plant in a freezer. You must have the courage to cut the cords that bind you to the person you used to be. This is a confrontational process that demands you stop seeking permission to evolve. You don't need a consensus to change your life. You only need the resolve to bury the version of you that no longer fits. This is the pain of letting go, the realization that some people and some places cannot come with you where you are going. It is a necessary sacrifice on the altar of your own greatness. The ego is a master manipulator that will use your own virtues against you to prevent your evolution. It will call your fear prudence, your stagnation loyalty, and your cowardice being realistic. It will make you feel like you are losing your soul when you are actually just losing your chains. This psychological warfare is the primary reason people spend decades in the same cycles, wondering why life feels like a repetitive movie. They are waiting for a transformation that doesn't require a death. They want the resurrection without the crucifixion. But there is no way to bypass the suffering of identity destruction. You have to feel the agony of watching your old beliefs crumble. You have to endure the embarrassment of admitting that you were wrong about who you were. This is a brutally honest audit of your entire existence. Look at your daily habits and ask yourself, does the person I want to be do this? If the answer is no, then that habit is a part of the identity that must die. Look at your deepest convictions about money, love, and your own value. Many of these are not truths. They are just scars from your past that you have labeled as reality. You are protecting your weakest version by pretending these limitations are facts of life. They are not facts. They are choices. Every time you say, I'm just the kind of person who, you are signing a death warrant for your potential. You are reinforcing the walls of your own cage. The process of becoming someone your past can't recognize is a process of systematic defiance. You must act in direct opposition to your old identity until the new actions become your new nature. It is an aggressive, daily confrontation with the ghost of who you were, a refusal to let a dead person drive the car of your life. Holding on to an outdated identity is like carrying a corpse on your back and wondering why you are tired all the time. It is a heavy, decaying weight that poisons every new opportunity that comes your way. You cannot enter a new relationship, a new career, or a new level of health while still identifying as the person who failed in the past. If you see yourself as a struggling artist, you will find ways to sabotage your success to stay consistent with that image. If you see yourself as someone who isn't good with money, you will bleed every dollar you earn to maintain that narrative. The human mind has an obsessive need for consistency, and it will prioritize being right about its identity over being happy or successful. This is why you must break the narrative before you can change the results. You have to stop telling the story of your trauma as if it's a permanent feature of your landscape. It was a weather event, not the geography. The pain of letting go is the pain of realizing that you have been your own jailer for years. It is the realization that the door was always unlocked, but you were too afraid of the world outside the cell. This realization is empowering once you get past the initial shock. It means that if you built the identity that's holding you back, you have the power to tear it down. You are not a finished product. You are a work in progress that has been stalled by a fear of your own shadow. It's time to stop negotiating with the version of you that is afraid of the light. You have to be willing to be a nobody for a while so that you can eventually become the somebody you were destined to be. This is the psychological death that precedes the rebirth. It is quiet, it is lonely, and it is the most important thing you will ever do. Most people spend their lives avoiding the mirror because they can't stand the gap between who they are and who they know they could be. They fill the gap with noise, substances, and busywork to drown out the internal scream of their dormant potential. This chapter is a demand that you turn off the noise and look directly into that gap. You need to feel the full weight of the dissatisfaction. You need to get angry at the version of you that has settled for crumbs. This anger is a powerful fuel if you direct it toward destruction rather than self-pity. Use it to incinerate the habits that keep you sedated. Use it to blast through the wall of ego resistance that tells you it's too late to change. It is never too late to kill the identity that's holding you back, but it is always too late to wait until tomorrow. The transformation you seek is on the other side of the person you are currently afraid to lose. You think you are losing yourself, but you are actually just losing a mask that was forced upon you by circumstances and conditioning. The real you is not a collection of memories. The real you is the conscious power that can choose to walk away from those memories at any moment. This is the ultimate freedom, and it is also the ultimate responsibility. You are the only one who can pull the trigger on your old life. No one is coming to save you, and no one is coming to do the hard work of identity destruction for you. You have to be the one to say, "This version of me is dead." You have to be the one to stop participating in your own limitations. The psychological death of the old self is not a one-time event. It is a daily commitment to not resurrect the ghost. The final stage of this process is the acceptance of the void. Once you have successfully dismantled the old identity, there will be a period where you feel empty, lost, and without a compass. Do not rush to fill this space with a new identity just because you are uncomfortable. This void is where the magic happens. It is the fertile soil where the new blueprint will be drawn. If you rush to find a new label, you will likely just pick up a slightly better version of the old one. Stay in the discomfort. Get comfortable with being a stranger to yourself. This is the state of pure potentiality where you can finally decide, without the weight of the past, who you want to be. The aggressive, intense nature of this transformation is required because the pull of the old self is incredibly strong. It is like gravity. The closer you are to the old life, the harder it is to escape. You need a massive burst of energy to break the orbit of your history. This script is your countdown. It is the signal that the old world is over and the new one is beginning. You have been given the tools to understand why you have stayed the same and the reasons why you must change. Now, the choice is yours. Will you continue to protect the weakest version of yourself, or will you have the courage to kill the identity that's holding you back? The person your past can't recognize is waiting on the other side of this psychological death. They are stronger, wiser, and more powerful than you can currently imagine. But they cannot exist as long as the current you is taking up space. It is time to clear the ground. It is time to let the old you go. The blueprint for your future requires a clean slate, and only you have the power to wipe it clean. Welcome to the beginning of your reinvention. Mediocrity is rarely a sudden choice. It is a slow, rhythmic accumulation of unremarkable decisions that eventually harden into a life sentence. You are currently the sum total of every repetitive action you have taken over the last decade, a biological record of your most frequent thoughts and movements. Most people move through their days in a state of semi-hypnosis, dictated by a neural architecture that was designed for efficiency, not excellence. Your brain is a pattern-matching machine that seeks to minimize energy expenditure by turning every new action into a mindless routine. This is why you find yourself checking your phone before you're even fully awake, or driving to a job you hate while your mind is miles away. These are not just habits. They are the invisible tracks upon which the train of your life is currently running. If the tracks lead to a dead end, it doesn't matter how fast the train is moving or how much you hope for a different destination. To change your life, you must first acknowledge that your current identity is merely a symptom of your current patterns. You are not lazy or unproductive by nature. You are simply a person who has practiced the art of distraction and procrastination until you became a master of it. The first step in this analytical audit is to strip away the emotional stories you tell yourself and look at the cold, hard data of your daily schedule. If an outside observer watched a silent film of your last 7 days, what would they conclude about your priorities? The gap between who you say you want to be and what you actually do is where your future goes to die. Breaking the pattern requires you to stop being a passenger in your own mind and start acting as the lead investigator of your own behavior. The human mind is addicted to the predictable, even when the predictable is painful, because the brain perceives familiarity as safety. This comfort addiction is the silent killer of ambition, a psychological trap that keeps you tethered to the average because the great feels too volatile. We repeat cycles of behavior, failed diets, toxic relationships, stagnant career moves, not because we are stupid, but because the neural pathways for those failures are well-worn and easy to navigate. Behavioral psychology shows us that the brain releases dopamine not just for rewards, but for the anticipation of a known outcome. You would rather stay in a familiar mental loop of self-criticism than venture into the terrifying silence of a new way of thinking. This is why you feel a strange sense of relief when you finally give up on a goal. The tension of the new is gone, and you have returned to the equilibrium of your old, mediocre self. These mental loops are reinforced by your environment, which acts as an external hard drive for your habits. Your couch, your kitchen, and even the people you talk to are all triggers that pull you back into the gravity of your past. You are living in a feedback loop where your environment triggers a thought, your thought triggers an action, and your action reinforces the environment. To break this, you must realize that awareness is the only weapon that can cut through the fog of routine. You have to become hyper-conscious of the micro-moments where you choose the path of least resistance. The moment you feel the urge to retreat into comfort is the exact moment the disruption must occur. If you do not consciously intervene, the machine will continue to run on its original programming until there is nothing left of your potential but a series of what-ifs. Breaking a pattern feels fundamentally wrong to the nervous system, often manifesting as a physical sensation of anxiety or a deep sense of unnaturalness. When you decide to wake up at 5 in the morning or speak with a level of authority you haven't yet earned, your body will literally signal that you are in danger. This is the biological cost of growth. It is the friction of new neurons trying to fire in a brain that is used to the old ways. Most people misinterpret this discomfort as a sign that they are doing something wrong, when in reality, it is the only proof that they are doing something right. If your new life feels comfortable, you aren't reinventing yourself. You're just rearranging the furniture in your prison cell. True disruption requires you to embrace the feeling of being an imposter in your own life. It requires you to act against your feelings, not in alignment with them. Discipline is not about having a strong will. It is about having a system that makes the old patterns more difficult to execute than the new ones. It is about creating a deliberate environment of friction for your weaknesses. If you have a pattern of wasting time on social media, the answer isn't trying harder to stop. It's deleting the apps and leaving your phone in another room. You must treat your old self like a hostile entity that is trying to sabotage your progress. This sharp, critical eye toward your own behavior is what separates the elite from the average. The average person waits for motivation to strike, while the reinvented person uses discipline to manufacture momentum. You are currently in a war with your own biology, and the only way to win is to make the cost of staying the same higher than the cost of changing. Awareness is the light, but discipline is the heat that actually melts the old structures of your identity. The cycles of mediocrity are often masked by a false sense of busyness, where people confuse movement with progress. You can spend your whole life running on a treadmill of minor tasks and unconscious routines, feeling exhausted at the end of every day, yet never actually moving a single inch forward. This is the trap of functional average, where you do just enough to stay afloat, but never enough to reach the shore. We repeat these cycles because they provide a low-level sense of accomplishment that keeps the ego satisfied. You answered 30 emails, you went to the grocery store, and you watched a documentary on success, all while your actual dreams remained untouched on a shelf. This analytical reality is eye-opening because it exposes how much of your work is actually just a sophisticated form of hiding. You are hiding from the big, scary, pattern-breaking actions by burying yourself in the safe, pattern-reinforcing ones. Breaking the cycle requires a brutal pruning of your activities. You must identify the 20% of your habits that are producing 80% of your stagnation. It is a slightly critical process that demands you stop lying to yourself about how you spend your time. Most people are not overworked. They are underpurposed and overstimulated. They are caught in a mental loop of consumption where they take in more information than they ever put into practice. This creates a state of learned helplessness, where you know what to do but feel powerless to do it because your patterns have become too heavy. To disrupt this, you must introduce pattern interrupts, small, radical changes that force your brain out of its autopilot mode. Change the route you drive, the time you eat, or the way you respond to stress. Every small break in the routine creates a crack in the old identity, allowing the light of a new possibility to seep through. Mental loops are the invisible architecture of your failure, creating a ceiling on your life that you don't even know is there. These are the repetitive thoughts that tell you why you can't, why you shouldn't, or why it's not the right time. Behavioral psychology calls this rumination, a process where the mind rehearses the same negative outcomes until they become your perceived reality. You have likely been thinking the same 10 thoughts for the last 5 years, and those thoughts have built the world you currently inhabit. If you want a new world, you need a new vocabulary for your mind. This isn't about positive thinking. It's about cognitive restructuring, the sharp, analytical process of identifying a limiting thought and systematically dismantling its logic. When you catch yourself in a loop of, "I'm not ready," you must demand evidence for that claim. Most of our mental patterns are based on outdated data from our childhood or past failures that are no longer relevant. By bringing these loops into the light of awareness, they lose their power to control your actions. You realize that you have been taking orders from a ghost. Motivating yourself through this stage requires a cold recognition that your thoughts are not you. They are just noise generated by a machine that is trying to keep things the same. You are the observer of the noise, and as the observer, you have the power to change the station. Breaking these mental patterns is the most difficult part of the blueprint because the loops are internal and silent. They require a level of self-vigilance that is exhausting, but it is the only way to ensure that you are not being led toward mediocrity by a version of yourself that no longer exists. You must become the gatekeeper of your own mind, refusing entry to any thought that seeks to reinforce the average. The power of habit is often described as a double-edged sword, but for most people, it is a dull blade that only serves to keep them from cutting through the noise of their lives. We are programmed to seek the path of least resistance, which in the modern world means a path of endless consumption and zero creation. Your patterns are likely being designed for you by corporations, social media algorithms, and the expectations of your peer group. You are a product of your inputs. If you spend your time consuming average media and talking to average people about average topics, you will inevitably produce an average life. This is the harsh reality of social conditioning. To break these patterns, you must be willing to be the odd one out. You must introduce a level of radical intentionality into your life that others will find obsessive or even strange. This slightly critical stance towards social norms is necessary for self-reinvention. While others are following the herd into the valley of the mediocre, you must be the one who climbs the mountain alone. This requires a sharp break from the comparison trap, where you measure your progress against people who aren't even playing the same game as you. Your only benchmark should be the version of you that existed yesterday. If you are repeating the same patterns today that you did yesterday, you are effectively standing still in a world that is moving forward. Awareness of this stagnation is eye-opening and should act as a powerful motivator. You are either building a masterpiece or you are accumulating trash. There is no middle ground. Every action is a vote for the person you want to become, and the majority of your votes are currently being cast for a person your past would recognize instantly. It is time to change the way you vote. Ultimately, breaking the patterns that keep you average is about reclaiming your sovereignty over your own time and energy. It is about realizing that you have been living a life that was largely on autopilot, and that the off switch is finally within your reach. This chapter has exposed the mechanics of your stagnation, but understanding the machine is not the same as dismantling it. You must now take the analytical tools of awareness and the sharp edge of discipline and begin the process of structural change. This will feel unnatural. You will want to go back to the loops. You will crave the comfort of the mediocre because it is easy and it is safe. But you must remember that safety is a myth and easy is a lie that leads to a difficult life. The reinvented version of you, the one who is unrecognizable to your past, is built through the hundreds of pattern interrupts you will perform today, tomorrow, and the day after. It is a slow, methodical process of rewriting your internal code. You must be patient but relentless. You must be motivated by the vision of your future, but grounded in the reality of your current habits. The blueprint is now in your hands, and the first major task is the disruption of the average. Stop the routine. Break the loop. Deny the comfort. The discomfort you feel right now is the sound of your old identity breaking apart, and it is the most beautiful sound in the world. You are no longer a victim of your habits. You are the architect of your future. The tracks are being moved, the train is changing direction, and the destination is finally something you chose for yourself. Welcome to the world of the conscious, the disciplined, and the unrecognizable. The human brain is the most sophisticated piece of technology in the known universe. Yet most of us are operating on software that was installed during our childhood and never updated. We move through our adult lives attempting to build empires while using the mental operating system of a terrified adolescent or a discouraged student. This is the fundamental mismatch that keeps high potential locked behind low performance. To begin the process of self-reinvention, you must understand that your thoughts are not just fleeting whispers in the dark. They are the physical architects of your reality. Every repetitive thought you think acts as a chemical signal that carves a literal path through your gray matter. This is the essence of neuroplasticity, the scientific reality that your brain is not a finished stone carving, but a dynamic, living organ that can be reshaped at any age. You are currently the result of the neural pathways you have allowed to become highways over the years. If you have spent a decade practicing self-doubt, you have built a high-speed expressway for failure. If you have practiced resilience, you have built a bridge over your obstacles. The mind does not distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined. It only responds to the frequency and intensity of the signals you send it. Therefore, if you want to become someone your past cannot recognize, you must first become a technician of your own internal dialogue. You have to stop being the victim of your brain's default settings and start becoming the lead programmer of your future. This is not mystical thinking. It is biological engineering. By changing the narrative you feed your subconscious, you change the literal structure of your mind, and by extension, the trajectory of your entire life. Most people operate under the delusion that their beliefs are objective truths when, in reality, they are merely habitual thoughts that have been repeated so often they've become invisible. We treat our internal limitations as if they are laws of physics like gravity, but they are actually just outdated mental programming that was designed to keep us safe, not successful. Your belief system acts as a filter for your perception. It decides what opportunities you see and which ones you ignore. If you believe the world is a place of scarcity, your brain will literally blind you to the abundance standing right in front of you. This is known as the reticular activating system, a neural gateway that sorts through the millions of bits of information hitting your senses every second. It only lets in what aligns with your current identity. If your identity is rooted in your past failures, your brain will seek out evidence to prove you are right to stay stuck. This is why hard work often fails when it isn't preceded by mental rewiring. You can work 80 hours a week, but if your internal dialogue is whispering that you don't deserve success, you will unconsciously sabotage your progress to maintain internal consistency. To break this cycle, you must perform a radical audit of your belief systems. You have to identify the lies you've been telling yourself about your intelligence, your worth, and your potential. You have to realize that you have been living in a mental prison where the bars are made of nothing but your own definitions. Rewiring your mind requires you to intentionally choose a new set of beliefs that serve the person you are becoming, rather than the person you used to be. It is the process of replacing the "I can't" with a relentless curiosity about "how can I?" The process of mental rewiring is a game of repetition and focus, requiring a level of intentionality that most people are unwilling to exert. You cannot change a decade of negative programming with a single afternoon of positive thinking. It requires a systematic, daily bombardment of the new identity until the old neural pathways begin to wither from disuse. Think of your mind as a lush jungle. The old habits are well-worn trails that are easy to walk, while the new thoughts are thick brush that must be cleared with a machete. The first few times you think a new, empowering thought, it will feel fake and forced because the electrical signal is struggling to find a path. But with every repetition, the path becomes clearer and the resistance decreases. This is where focus becomes your most valuable currency. What you focus on, you give life to. If you focus on the person you used to be, you are feeding the ghost of your past. If you focus on the blueprint of your future, you are feeding the architect of your destiny. Most of us leak our focus into distractions that reinforce our average state, from mindlessly scrolling through the lives of others to obsessing over things we cannot control. To rewire your mind, you must become a monk of your own attention. You must guard your mental space with a ferocity that borders on the obsessive. You must use visualization not as a daydream, but as a mental rehearsal. When you vividly imagine yourself performing at a higher level, your brain creates the same neural connections as if you were actually doing it. You are literally pre-wiring your mind for a success that hasn't happened yet in the physical world, making the eventual transition feel like a natural evolution rather than a jarring leap. Environment is the silent partner in your mental rewiring, acting as either a wind at your back or a wall in your face. Your brain is constantly scanning your surroundings for cues on how to behave, and if your environment is filled with artifacts of your old life, you are making the rewiring process unnecessarily difficult. Every object you own, every person you follow on social media, and every conversation you have with a friend carries a specific emotional and mental weight. If you are trying to rewire your mind for wealth, but you are surrounded by people who complain about being broke, you are fighting an uphill battle against your own biology. We are mimetic creatures. We naturally adopt the thought patterns and behaviors of the systems we inhabit. To accelerate your growth, you must curate an environment that mirrors the person you are becoming. This might mean clearing the clutter from your workspace, changing the music you listen to, or even stepping away from relationships that reinforce your weakest version. You need to flood your senses with inputs that align with your new blueprint. Surround yourself with the ideas of giants, the voices of the relentless, and the imagery of the life you intend to build. Your mind should be a sanctuary for your future, not a museum for your past. When your external environment matches your internal vision, the friction of change begins to dissolve. The rewiring happens faster because the brain is no longer receiving conflicting signals. You are creating a feedback loop where your thoughts shape your environment and your environment reinforces your thoughts. This synergy is the secret of those who seem to transform overnight. They didn't just change their minds. They changed the world they lived in until it forced their minds to follow suit. Internal dialogue is the constant narration of your life. And for most people, the narrator is a harsh critic who lacks vision. This voice in your head is the most frequent sound you hear, and its tone dictates your emotional state and your level of risk tolerance. If the narrator is constantly pointing out what could go wrong or reminding you of your 2014 failures, you will remain paralyzed in a state of hypervigilance. Rewiring your mind involves firing this old narrator and hiring a new one. This isn't about being delusional. It's about being strategic. You need an internal dialogue that focuses on solutions rather than problems and on growth rather than safety. Start by catching the narrator in the act. When you hear a thought that shrinks your potential, pause and intentionally rephrase it. Instead of saying, "I am overwhelmed," say, "I am in a high-growth phase that requires a new level of focus." The shift in language changes the chemical response in your brain from stress to engagement. This is the power of linguistic programming. Your words are the blueprints for your nervous system. If you speak the language of the average, you will feel the emotions of the average and produce the results of the average. If you speak the language of the relentless, you will trigger a physiological response that prepares you for battle. This internal shift is the mental game that must be won before any physical victory can be claimed. You cannot win on the outside what you have already lost on the inside. By taking control of the internal microphone, you start to broadcast a new frequency of confidence and capability that eventually becomes your natural state of being. Relentless growth is a mental state that views every challenge as data and every failure as a necessary software update. When you have successfully rewired your mind, the word impossible starts to sound like a challenge rather than a conclusion. You stop looking for reasons why things won't work and start looking for the one way they will. This shift in perspective is the ultimate competitive advantage because while everyone else is looking for an exit strategy, you are looking for an entry point. Rewiring your mind for this level of growth means falling in love with the process of learning and unlearning. You have to be willing to kill your darlings, to let go of the ideas and methods that got you to your current level so that you can reach the next one. Most people reach a certain plateau and stop growing because they become attached to their current competence. They are afraid to be a beginner again. But the rewired mind thrives in the beginner state because it knows that discomfort is the primary indicator of neural expansion. You must become a scientist of your own potential, constantly running experiments on your habits and your thoughts to see what produces the best output. This scientific detachment allows you to move through the world with a sense of focused calm. You are no longer emotionally shattered by setbacks because you understand that they are just feedback in a much larger system. You are playing a long game, and your mind is the board, the pieces, and the player all at once. When you master the mental game, the physical world begins to rearrange itself to match your internal frequency. Growth is no longer something you have to chase. It becomes an inevitable consequence of the person you have become. As you conclude this stage of the blueprint, understand that your mind is now an active construction site. The old structures have been condemned, the debris is being cleared, and the new foundations are being poured. This is a delicate and intense time in your reinvention. The temptation to revert to your old mental programming will be strongest when you are tired, stressed, or lonely. During these moments, you must lean into the tools of repetition and environment with even greater intensity. Remind yourself that you are not the person who used to inhabit this space. You are the architect, and you have the blueprints for something far more magnificent. Every time you choose an intentional thought over an impulsive one, you are laying a brick in the fortress of your new identity. The transformation you are seeking is a series of small, invisible victories that happen inside the silence of your own head. No one will see the neurons firing differently. No one will hear the narrator change its tone. But eventually, the physical world will have no choice but to reflect the changes you have made in the dark. You will walk differently, speak differently, and make decisions that your past self would have found terrifying. This is the moment you know the rewiring is complete, when the things that used to be difficult now feel effortless, and the person you used to be feels like a character from a movie you saw a long time ago. You have successfully updated your software, and you are now ready to run the programs of greatness. The mental game is won. Now, it is time to move into the world and build the reality that your new mind has already seen. You are officially someone your past can no longer recognize. Comfort is a slow-acting poison that masquerades as a reward, whispering to you that you have done enough while it quietly suffocates your potential in its sleep. We are biologically wired to seek the path of least resistance because our ancestors survived by conserving energy and avoiding the unknown. Your brain is a survival machine, not a fulfillment machine, and it views the discomfort of growth as a literal threat to your existence. When you try to wake up earlier, speak more boldly, or push your body past its current limits, your amygdala screams in protest, trying to pull you back into the warm, numbing embrace of the familiar. This is why most people live a life that is a mere shadow of what it could be. They have mistaken the absence of pain for the presence of happiness. But the truth is that a life without friction is a life without traction. You cannot move forward if you are unwilling to be burned by the heat of your own evolution. The very sensations you have been taught to avoid, the racing heart, the sweaty palms, the hollow ache of uncertainty, are actually the biological indicators that you are finally breaking free from your old skin. To reinvent yourself, you must stop treating discomfort like an enemy and start treating it like a compass. If it feels safe, you are stagnant. If it feels easy, you are decaying. The blueprint for greatness requires you to dismantle the couch you've been resting on and walk into the fire of your own becoming. You must realize that every dream you have is currently being held hostage by your own desire to feel relaxed. Comfort is the graveyard of ambition, and if you want to become someone your past cannot recognize, you must be willing to live in the places that make you tremble. Resistance is a master of disguise, often showing up as a logical reason to wait, a sudden bout of fatigue, or a lingering doubt about your own readiness. It is the invisible force that pushes back the moment you decide to step outside the boundaries of your current identity. Emotional avoidance is the mechanism we use to stay small, convincing ourselves that we aren't ready for the next level because the next level feels heavy and intimidating. Most people spend their entire lives negotiating with this resistance, hoping for a day when the fear will disappear and the path will become clear. That day is a myth designed to keep you sedated. The fear never goes away. You simply become the kind of person who can carry it without stumbling. Successful individuals are not fearless. They are simply more afraid of staying the same than they are of the pain of changing. They have trained their nervous systems to tolerate high levels of psychological and emotional stress, understanding that the capacity to suffer productively is the ultimate competitive advantage. While the average person is looking for an exit strategy from the tension, the elite are looking for the entry point into the struggle. They know that the most valuable version of themselves is waiting on the other side of the task they are currently avoiding. You must develop a radical intolerance for your own excuses. Every time you choose the easy path, you are reinforcing your weakest version. You are casting a vote for the person you used to be. To win this war, you must stop seeking relief and start seeking the weight. You must fall in love with the grind of the ascent, knowing that the view from the top is only accessible to those who were willing to bleed during the climb. Mental toughness is not a personality trait you are born with. It is a muscle that is built through the repetitive act of choosing the hard thing over the easy thing. It is forged in the moments when no one is watching, when you are tired, and when every cell in your body is begging you to quit. This is the practice of delayed gratification, the ability to sacrifice the now for the next. Most people are slaves to their immediate impulses, chasing the hit of dopamine that comes from a snack, a scroll, or a nap, effectively selling their future for a fleeting moment of relief. But the architect of a new life understands that the real rewards are hidden behind the wall of temporary agony. When you force yourself to stay in the cold shower, to finish the final set of reps, or to make the difficult phone call, you are doing more than just completing a task. You are rewiring your identity. You are proving to your subconscious that you are no longer a victim of your feelings. You are establishing a new hierarchy where your will sits on the throne and your impulses are the subjects. This is the only way to build a confidence that is unshakable. You cannot lie to yourself about your own capability. You know exactly how often you folded under pressure in the past. To change that narrative, you must accumulate a mountain of evidence that proves you can endure. You must become a seeker of voluntary hardship. By intentionally inviting small doses of discomfort into your daily life, you build an immunity to the large-scale chaos that life will inevitably throw at you. You are hardening your spirit so that when the world tries to break you, it finds a surface of reinforced steel instead of glass. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is filled with all the conversations you are afraid to have, the risks you are afraid to take, and the discipline you are afraid to maintain. This is the confrontation that most people spend their lives avoiding through a sophisticated web of busy work and distraction. They tell themselves they are working hard when they are actually just working safe. But there is no such thing as safe transformation. To become someone new, the old you must be destroyed, and destruction is never comfortable. It is a violent, messy, and psychologically draining process. You have to be willing to be the beginner who looks like a fool. You have to be willing to be the outcast who no longer fits in at the bar or the break room. You have to be willing to sit in the silence of your own loneliness while you build something that no one else can see yet. This emotional endurance is the price of admission for the life you say you want. Most people are unwilling to pay it. They want the crown without the thorns, but life doesn't work that way. The intensity of your growth is directly proportional to the intensity of the discomfort you can handle. If you find yourself constantly reaching for a way to numb the pain or distract yourself from the tension, you are stalling your own evolution. You are essentially telling the universe that you are not strong enough to handle the blessing you are asking for. Empowerment comes from the realization that you don't need the discomfort to stop to keep moving. You are the storm, not the leaf being blown by it. When you stop running from the struggle, you take away its power over you. You become a relentless force that can navigate any terrain because you have already conquered the terrain of your own mind. The elite performers of the world have a different relationship with pain than the rest of the population. They don't just tolerate it. They use it as a metric for success. If they don't feel the burn of effort or the sting of criticism, they assume they aren't playing a big enough game. They have conditioned themselves to recognize that the feeling of not wanting to do it is actually the signal that they must do it immediately. This is the aggressive pursuit of the edge. Most people stay in the center of their comfort zone, where the air is stale and the possibilities are limited. But the edge is where the magic happens. The edge is where the old rules break and the new you is born. To reach the edge, you must be willing to push past the point of no return, the moment where your brain tells you that you've done enough. That is usually the moment the real work begins. Everything up to that point was just the warm-up. You have to train your mind to associate discomfort with progress. When you feel the resistance, you should feel a surge of excitement, because you know you are finally in the arena where the stakes are real. This is a complete inversion of the standard human experience. While others are retreating into the safety of their habits, you are leaning into the volatility of your potential. You are becoming a predator of your own weakness, hunting down the parts of yourself that are still soft and making them hard. This level of intensity is not for everyone, and that is exactly why it is the key to an unrecognizable future. The scarcity of people willing to do this work is your greatest opportunity. If you can become comfortable with being uncomfortable, you have already won the game, because you have removed the only obstacle that can truly stop you. We often mistake comfort for peace, but they are polar opposites. Peace is the result of knowing you have done your absolute best and left nothing on the table. Comfort is the result of hiding from the demands of your own soul. One is an active state of integrity, and the other is a passive state of decay. Every time you choose the comfortable option, you are chipping away at your self-respect. You are telling yourself that you aren't worth the effort. This is the root of the quiet desperation that plagues so many people. They are surrounded by luxuries and conveniences, yet they feel empty because they have no challenges to overcome. They have no dragons to slay, so they have become the dragon. To break out of this cycle, you must introduce a level of rigor into your life that borders on the fanatical. You must hold yourself to a standard that makes others uncomfortable just by watching you. This isn't about being better than anyone else. It's about being better than the version of you that gave up last time. It's about the silent pride that comes from doing the work when you are sick, when you are sad, and when you are completely uninspired. That is the definition of a relentless mind. You are building a blueprint that is not made of paper, but of scars and sweat. You are creating a version of yourself that is so far removed from your past that the two could never occupy the same room. This is the aggressive nature of reinvention. It is a hostile takeover of your own life, and the first order of business is the total eradication of your need for comfort. From this moment on, you are a creature of the cold, a traveler of the difficult road, and a master of the hard choice. You don't ask for a lighter load. You ask for broader shoulders, and you get them by carrying the weight that others drop. As you conclude this chapter, you must make a final pact with yourself. You must promise that you will never again prioritize your current comfort over your future growth. You must see every moment of hesitation as a test of your resolve. When you feel the pull of the old self, the one who wants to stay in bed, the one who wants to play it safe, the one who wants to blend in, you must meet that urge with an immediate and decisive counteraction. The blueprint is useless if the architect is too soft to lay the foundation in the rain. You are here to become someone unrecognizable, and that person is forged in the fires of the uncomfortable. The pain of discipline is measured in ounces, but the pain of regret is measured in tons. Choose your pain wisely. You are now equipped with the understanding that discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong, but a sign that your old life is dying to make room for something better. Let it die. Do not try to save it. Do not try to make the transition comfortable. Let the process be as raw and as intense as it needs to be. You have the mental toughness, you have the vision, and you have the blueprint. Now, you must have the stomach for the journey. The world is waiting to see who you become when you stop being afraid of the feeling of being alive. This is the end of your safety net. From here on out, you are operating in the zone of relentless growth, where the only way to stay standing is to keep moving. The discomfort is your new baseline. The struggle is your new home. And the victory is already yours because you have stopped running from the only thing that could ever make you great. Welcome to the uncomfortable life of the extraordinary. This is the moment you truly begin. The greatest tragedy in the pursuit of greatness is not a lack of talent, but a chronic habit of negotiating with your own potential. Most people treat their goals like a series of suggestions rather than a set of absolute commands, opening a boardroom in their minds every time they feel the slightest bit of resistance. They wake up and ask themselves if they feel like working out, if they feel like writing, or if they feel like making the calls that will change their tax bracket. The moment you ask yourself how you feel before deciding whether or not to act, you have already lost the battle for your future. This internal negotiation is the ultimate symptom of a lack of standards, a sign that your commitment is conditional upon your comfort. You are essentially telling the universe that your dreams are only worth pursuing when the sun is shining and your mood is perfect. High performers do not live this way because they understand that feelings are the most unreliable compass in existence. They don't have a dialogue with their excuses. They have a set of non-negotiable standards that govern their movements regardless of the emotional weather. To become someone your past cannot recognize, you must shut down the negotiation table for good. You must move from a state of constant deliberation to a state of absolute execution. There is no middle ground between a person who follows through and a person who makes excuses. You must decide today that your word to yourself is the highest law in your land, and that breaking it is no longer an option. This is where true discipline begins, in the cold, hard realization that your feelings are irrelevant to the mission at hand. The architecture of mediocrity is built upon a foundation of internal excuses that have been allowed to go unchallenged for years. We tell ourselves we are too tired, that we don't have enough time, or that we will start tomorrow when things are more aligned. These are not reasons. They are sophisticated lies designed to protect the ego from the discomfort of effort. When you negotiate with these lies, you are effectively training your brain to see your goals as optional, which erodes your self-respect at a molecular level. Every time you set an alarm and hit snooze, you are casting a vote against your own character. You are telling your subconscious that you are a person whose promises mean nothing. This lack of standards creates a leakage of power that makes it impossible to build a significant life. A person without non-negotiables is a person who can be bought for the price of a little temporary comfort or a bit of social validation. To stop this leakage, you must establish a set of identity-based rules that are carved in stone. You don't try to wake up early. You are the kind of person who is out of bed at 5 a.m. You don't hope to stay consistent. You are the kind of person who executes the plan regardless of the obstacles. This shift from goal-seeking to identity-claiming is the secret to relentless discipline. When your actions are a reflection of who you are rather than what you want, the need for motivation disappears. You don't need to feel inspired to do what is necessary, when what is necessary is simply who you have become. You must stop being a victim of your impulses and start being the commander of your own biology. Emotional decision-making is the primary enemy of the self-reinvention blueprint because it prioritizes the now over the next with a short-sighted intensity. Your emotions are designed to keep you safe and comfortable, which is the exact opposite of what is required for radical transformation. When you allow your mood to dictate your productivity, you are living as a servant to a master that is notoriously unstable. High performers operate with a level of clinical detachment from their temporary emotional states. They have replaced the question, "Do I feel like it?" with the statement, "It is time." This directness is what allows them to accumulate the massive volume of work required to become unrecognizable. Consistency is not about being perfect. It is about being predictable in your output. It is about showing up when you are grieving, when you are angry, and when you are completely uninspired. This is how you build a version of you that doesn't negotiate. You create a series of if-then statements for your life that remove the need for willpower. If it is Monday morning, then I am at the gym. If I have a deadline, then I am working until it is finished. By pre-deciding your actions, you save your mental energy for the work itself rather than wasting it on the internal struggle of whether or not to begin. This is authoritative living, a no-nonsense approach to existence that demands you stop treating your life like a dress rehearsal. You are either a person who follows through or you are a person who makes noise. The world only rewards the former. Commitment is the bridge between the version of you that exists today and the version that your past can't even fathom. Self-respect is the byproduct of discipline, and it is the most powerful fuel you can have in your arsenal. You cannot feel confident if you are constantly breaking the promises you make to the person in the mirror. Confidence is not a feeling you conjure up through affirmations. It is the earned result of a long history of kept commitments. When you become someone who doesn't negotiate, you develop a quiet, unshakable belief in your own ability to handle whatever comes your way. You know that if you say you will do something, it is as good as done. This level of integrity with yourself creates a magnetic power that others can sense from a mile away. People are drawn to those who are disciplined because discipline is the ultimate form of strength. It shows that you have conquered the most difficult enemy of all, your own weakness. To reach this state, you must start by setting small, non-negotiable standards and defending them with your life. These aren't just tasks, they are trials of your will. Whether it's a specific diet, a reading habit, or a work block, the content matters less than the adherence. You are practicing the art of being a person of your word. This direct approach to self-improvement strips away the fluff and the woo-woo nonsense and gets down to the core reality of character. You are what you do repeatedly, not what you say you will do eventually. Building a version of you that doesn't negotiate means burning the ships of your old excuses and realizing that the only way forward is through the fire of your own standards. Identity-based discipline is the final evolution of the self-reinvention process. It is the moment when your habits move from being things you do to being a part of who you are. A person who is trying to quit smoking is in a constant state of negotiation with a cigarette. A non-smoker doesn't negotiate because the action is no longer a possibility for them. You must apply this same logic to your growth. You are no longer trying to be disciplined. You are a disciplined man or woman. You are no longer trying to be successful. You are a producer who generates value as a matter of course. This shift in language and perspective removes the friction from your daily choices. When you operate from a place of strict rules, you are actually more free than the person who has no boundaries. The person without rules is a slave to their whims, their cravings, and the opinions of the crowd. The person with non-negotiable standards is the master of their own destiny. They have created a perimeter around their time and energy that no one, including their own lazy impulses, is allowed to breach. This is empowering because it puts the steering wheel of your life firmly in your hands. You stop looking for external luck or permission and start looking at your own daily execution. If you follow the blueprint, the outcome is inevitable. The only variable is your willingness to stop the internal dialogue and start the external movement. This is the authoritative path to an unrecognizable life, a journey that requires you to be your own most demanding coach and your own most loyal soldier. The cost of consistency is high, but the cost of inconsistency is far higher. Inconsistency will cost you your dreams, your self-esteem, and the respect of those who matter most. It is a slow leak that eventually sinks the entire ship. Most people are inconsistent because they are looking for a finish line where they can finally stop being disciplined. They view growth as a temporary sprint rather than a permanent state of being. But the version of you that your past can't recognize is not a destination. It is a lifestyle. It is a commitment to a set of standards that you will uphold until the day you die. This direct, no-nonsense reality is what separates the legends from the spectators. The legends aren't the ones who had the best ideas. They are the ones who didn't stop when it got boring. They are the ones who did the same mundane things with an elite level of intensity for decades. You must develop a hunger for the boring, a passion for the repetitive, and a hatred for the shortcut. There are no shortcuts to a version of you that doesn't negotiate. There is only the long, straight road of follow-through. You must become a person who is obsessed with the how rather than the if. How will I get this done? How will I stay on track? The question of if has already been answered by your standards. By eliminating the option of failure, you force your mind to find the path to success. This is the ultimate form of mental toughness, a refusal to accept anything less than the highest version of your potential. As you conclude this chapter, look back at the trail of broken promises you've left in your past and make the decision that the trail ends here. From this moment forward, you are a person of absolute follow-through. You are the architect of a new identity that does not know how to back down or bargain with mediocrity. The blueprint is clear, the standards are set, and the rules are non-negotiable. You will wake up when you said you would. You will do the work you said you'd do. You will hold the line when everyone else is folding. This is not a suggestion. It is the fundamental requirement for the life you are building. The version of you that your past cannot recognize is waiting for you to prove that you are worthy of their power. You prove it through your discipline. You prove it through your consistency. You prove it by being the one who doesn't negotiate when the world gets loud and the path gets steep. Your self-respect is on the line. Your future is on the line. Stop talking, stop thinking, and start executing. The negotiation is over. The work has begun. You are now a creature of standards, a master of follow-through, and a relentless force of nature. This is the end of the old you and the birth of the indestructible. Welcome to the elite few who have the courage to hold themselves to a higher standard than the world ever could. Walk the path with your head high and your jaw set. You are no longer who you were. You are the one who gets it done, no matter what. The metamorphosis is finally complete, and you find yourself standing on a summit that the person you used to be couldn't even see through the fog of their own limitations. There is a profound, almost haunting silence that comes with this level of transformation, a realization that the old voices of doubt have been drowned out by the steady rhythm of your own competence. You look back at the version of yourself from a year ago, or even a month ago, and you feel a strange sense of detachment, as if you are observing a character in a movie rather than your own history. The clothes they wore, the excuses they made, and the fears that kept them awake at night now seem like artifacts from an ancient, forgotten civilization. This is the ultimate victory of the self-reinvention blueprint, the moment when your past becomes unrecognizable even to you. You no longer react to the world. You respond to it from a place of deep, centered power. The internal friction that used to drain your energy has been replaced by a seamless alignment of purpose and action. You don't have to remind yourself to be disciplined because excellence has become your resting state. You move through the world with a new kind of gravity, a weightiness that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you are capable of achieving. This isn't just a new chapter. It is an entirely new book, written in a language of confidence that your former self didn't have the vocabulary to speak. You have successfully navigated the void between who you were and who you were meant to be. And the person standing here now is a testament to the fact that humans are not born. They are made through the relentless application of will and vision. The clarity you now possess is a sharp, surgical instrument that cuts through the noise of modern life with effortless precision. Where there was once confusion and a desperate need for external validation, there is now an internal compass that never wavers. You see opportunities where you once saw obstacles, and you see lessons where you once saw failures. This clarity isn't just about knowing what to do. It's about knowing exactly what to ignore. You have developed a radical intolerance for anything that doesn't align with your higher frequency. The social circles that used to anchor you in mediocrity have naturally drifted away, replaced by an environment that reflects your new standards. Your mind is no longer a chaotic battlefield of conflicting desires. It is a streamlined command center dedicated to execution. You have gained total control over the narrative of your life, realizing that you are the sole architect of your reality. This sense of control is not about forcing the world to bend to your will, but about mastering your own internal response to whatever the world throws at you. You are unshakable because your foundation is no longer built on the shifting sands of other people's opinions or the volatile nature of your own emotions. It is built on the hard-earned evidence of your own discipline and the repeated victory over your own weaknesses. You walk into every room with the quiet assurance of a person who has already won the most important war there is. You have mastered the art of being the protagonist of your own story, and the world has no choice but to follow the script you have written for yourself. The alignment of your habits, mindset, and actions has created a powerful momentum that feels almost like a physical force. You no longer struggle to do the work. The work now flows through you because you have cleared the neural and emotional blockages that were holding you back. Your daily routine is no longer a chore, but a ritual of self-respect that reinforces your new identity with every passing hour. You wake up with a sense of mission that makes the snooze button look like an insult to your potential. Your body, your mind, and your spirit are finally speaking the same language, moving in the same direction at the same speed. This level of integration is the hallmark of the elite, the point where effort becomes grace and struggle becomes flow. You have reached a state of unconscious competence, where your excellence is automatic. This doesn't mean life is easy, but it means you have become the kind of person for whom difficulty is a preferred fuel. You have trained your nervous system to thrive in the high-pressure environment of growth, turning what used to be anxiety into a refined sense of anticipation. Every action you take is a deliberate stitch in the fabric of your future, and the pattern is now clear for all to see. The person your past can't recognize is someone who has bridged the gap between dreaming and doing, between potential and power. You are no longer waiting for the right moment because you have realized that you are the moment. This alignment is the ultimate payoff of the blueprint, the biological and psychological reward for the months of discomfort and the hours of silent, unseen labor. You are a finely tuned machine of your own design. The cost of this transformation was high, and you carry the scars of your evolution with a quiet pride that no one can take away. To become the person you are today, you had to watch parts of yourself die, and that is a grief that few people have the courage to endure. You had to sacrifice the comfort of being understood by people who were content to stay small. You had to endure the loneliness of the middle ground, where you were too big for your old life, but not yet ready for your new one. You had to face the brutal truth about your own laziness, your own cowardice, and your own complicity in your own stagnation. The currency of reinvention is paid in the sweat of the grind and the tears of the ego's demise. You had to be willing to be the villain in some people's stories so that you could be the hero in your own. But as you stand here now, you realize that the price was a bargain. Whatever you lost was just the weight that was keeping you from flying. The relationships that ended were the ones that could not survive your growth. The habits you killed were the ones that were killing you. Reflection reveals that the pain was never meant to break you, only to shape you. like the strike of a hammer against glowing steel. You have been forged in the fire of your own ambition, and the result is a version of yourself that is both resilient and radiant. The cost was everything you were, but the reward is everything you can be. You look back not with regret, but with a deep, reverent gratitude for the struggle, because you know that without the fire, you would still just be a piece of unformed iron. The investment in yourself has yielded a return that cannot be measured in currency, only in the quality of your soul and the depth of your freedom. Confidence in this new state is not a loud or boastful thing. It is a quiet, heavy presence that settles in the bones. It is the confidence of the surgeon, the pilot, or the athlete who has performed the same difficult task 10,000 times until the possibility of failure has been mathematically eliminated. You no longer need to tell people who you are because your results speak with a volume that no words could ever match. This confidence comes from a place of absolute self-trust. You know that if you lose everything today, you have the skills, the mindset, and the blueprint to build it all back twice as fast tomorrow. You are no longer a victim of circumstances because you have become the circumstance. This is the ultimate form of security in an uncertain world. It is the realization that your value is not in what you have, but in who you have become. You move with a relaxed intensity, a state of ready for anything, that allows you to enjoy the present moment without the background noise of anxiety about the future. You have earned the right to be here. You have paid your dues in the darkness, and now you get to live in the light of your own making. This confidence is contagious, inspiring those around you to question their own limits. But you are no longer responsible for their awakening. You are the beacon, not the tugboat. Your only job now is to keep burning brighter. You have realized that the most powerful thing a human can do is to decide to be different and then follow through until the world agrees. Your confidence is the shield that protects your vision, and your clarity is the sword that clears the path. You are a sovereign individual, a master of your domain, and a stranger to the person you were just a short time ago. Evolution is a continuous, relentless process that never truly stops, and the moment you think you have arrived is the moment you begin to decay. The self-reinvention blueprint is not a destination, but a methodology for a lifetime of growth. While you have reached a summit, you can already see the higher peaks stretching out toward the horizon. The difference now is that you no longer fear the climb. You crave it. You have fallen in love with the process of shedding old skins and discovering new layers of potential. You have become a professional at transformation. This is the mindset of the eternal student, the person who knows that good enough is the enemy of great. Every success you achieve is simply a new baseline from which to launch your next evolution. You are committed to a life of perpetual reinvention, a journey of seeing just how far the human spirit can go when it refuses to be contained. The person your past can't recognize is just the first version of a long line of increasingly powerful iterations of you. You have learned how to learn, how to change, and how to win. These are the meta skills that will serve you in every season of your life. Whether you are facing a career shift, a personal crisis, or a new creative challenge, you will meet it with the same blueprint that brought you here. You have realized that the only constant in the universe is change, and instead of resisting it, you have decided to lead it. You are the fire that feeds on the wind. The more life challenges you, the stronger you become. This is the relentless nature of the new you. You are a work in progress that will never be finished, a masterpiece that is constantly being refined by the hands of its own creator. As this chapter of the blueprint concludes, Take a final look at the horizon and realize that you are the master of everything you see. You have done what most people only talk about in hushed, hopeful tones. You have actually changed. You have broken the patterns, killed the identity, rewired the mind, and built a version of yourself that doesn't negotiate with mediocrity. You are the living proof that the past is not a prophecy and that your history does not have to be your destiny. The person you were is gone, and in their place stands a relentless, disciplined, and unrecognizable force of nature. Carry this blueprint with you into the world, not as a memory of what you did, but as a manual for what you will continue to do. The world is waiting for your next move. It is waiting to see how much further you can push, how much more you can build, and how many more boundaries you can shatter. You have the tools, you have the power, and you have the vision. The transition is over, and the reign of the new you has begun. Walk out into the world with your head held high, your heart full of fire, and your eyes fixed on the next peak. You are no longer who you were, and you are not yet all that you will be. You are the self-reinvention blueprint in motion. You are someone your past cannot recognize, and that is your greatest achievement. This is not the end of the journey. It is the birth of your true potential. Now, go out and show the world what a person of absolute can truly accomplish. The blueprint is yours. The future is yours. The victory is yours. Forever forward, forever relentless, and forever unrecognizable. This is your time. Welcome to your new life.